Hey, today I want to talk about how I learn songs and a few components that can really help in your musicianship and help you as a guitar player uh, learn songs quicker, memorize songs more completely and accurately, and memorize more songs. And help you understand how the ideas that you are hearing are connecting to what you're playing. Okay, so I'll start right away. And the first thing that I look at when I look at a song is the form of a song. So the verse, the chorus, the bridge. So I have labels for all those, and 90% of songs, depending on what style you're listening to, can be defined in that way, right? You can name the sections, and so it's super important to, in order to do this, it's super important to understand the number of measures in each section. So you want to get used to what 4 measure phrases, 8 measure phrases, 16 measure phrases sound like, um, just what they feel like, right? So if I'm playing and I know I'm starting in a 16 measure phrase, I know when it's going to start and end, and I know the feel depending on the tempo where it is. So that's important to be able to feel that element in time. So when I'm listening to songs now and I start a section, I'm able to focus on other things that we'll talk about later while the form is while it's going, while I'm listening to it, because I know what the 8 measures is going to sound like. And if it's different, like often it is, right? Like it's 8 measures plus 1 measure, and what happens there is it's basically, it's a lot of songs do that in the verse, so that when they get in, it builds into the chorus. It gives them one extra measure to build into the chorus. So often so when I'm looking at sections that are not uniform, so not 4, 8, or 16 measures, I define them basically from the standard. So if it's 8 measures plus one, because the intent was to have one more measure to build into the chorus, that's how I remember it. It's 8 measures plus one, and so that's easy to remember. Maybe one of the verses, the first verse does that, and the other verses are 8 measures, right? So it's easy to remember. And so what happens when I look at form this way is, instead of going through the song and going measure by measure, I'm able to see the song in its entirety and think of the song in its entirety, so that I'm able to just play it and nothing is going to surprise me. I know that the verse is going to be this long and the chorus is going to be this long, and I'm able to see the song in a way that I'm not reacting to. I'm able to just play. So that really helps, especially if you're performing and you have to remember the song. You're not just where you are in the song. You're able to play through it and be aware of the entire song. Okay, the second thing that I look at is chord progressions, and in particular, I listen to the bass first before I try to figure out any of the chords, because if in most music, the bass motion and the notes the bass player is playing is going to give away 90% of the chord progression in the song. So I'll give you an example, a simple example. So let's say we're in the key of C, and the chord progression goes from a C, the 1 chord, to a G, the 5 chord, and then to an A minor. But the bass player is playing a C, a B, and then to an A. And so obviously, the bass player is not playing the root of the 5 chord, he's playing the third. So when I'm focusing on that first, I'm still hearing a 1, 5, 6 chord progression, but I'm hearing the 5 chord in first inversion. The bass player's playing the 3 of the 5 chord. So the bass motion is 1, 7, 6. And so when the bass player plays a 7 in the key, one of the first chords that I would want to hear, or one of the first chords I would think it is, would be the 5 chord. And so it's super important to focus on the bass, and again, you can get the 90% of the song, like I said, and then you start to add the harmonic instruments like guitar and keyboards on top of that, so then you can hear the quality of the chord, right? So if it's major or minor 7, and you can kind of get that whole picture. And so you want to think in numbers in terms of chord progression. So you don't necessarily know what key it's in unless you have perfect pitch. I do not have perfect pitch, but I'm hearing them in numbers. So if I hear that song in the example I just gave, I wouldn't know it's in C, and I would hear the bass going from 1 to 7 to 6, and I would hear the chord progression is going from 1 to 5 to 6. kind of all at the same time. And so it doesn't matter what key it's in necessarily. If it's in the key of A flat, I'm going to go A flat to E flat to F minor, and the E flat's going to have a G in the bass. So it doesn't matter what key it's in. I'm hearing them in numbers. Okay, and then finally, and this is the thing that most guitar players do first. When they look at a song, they start trying to figure out the guitar parts right away. And I'm saying, and I'm suggesting that leave this to last. You want to understand the form, the bass motion and chord progression first, and then you move on to the parts. And the parts you want to think of in a certain way. So if we're on that in that same song and we're on the one chord, and the melody of the guitar part has an E, a D, and a C in it. Well, that has two relationships. That has a relationship to the key that we're in. So when we're in the key, it's 3-2-1, E, D, C, in the key of C. But it also has a relationship to the chord of the moment. So what if that same melody is repeated over the A minor chord? Well, now it changes color and it has a different relationship to the chord of the moment. So obviously the one chord has the same relationship, 3-2-1, E, D, C. But when I'm on the 6th chord, the A minor, the E, D, C has 5-4 flat 3. That's the color that our ear hears. And even if you know nothing about music, that's the color that listener is going to hear. And so it's a very natural way to hear. But what I'm saying is you want to determine that so that as you're learning that, you label it. Right, so just like I did, when it's over the 6th chord, it's 5-4 flat 3. When it's over the 1 chord, it's 3-2-1. And so when you're playing that and you're listening, your ear starts to grab a hold of that sound, and you're able to hear that it is 5-4 flat 3 on that chord. It has a certain, because all those notes have a certain sound when A is in the bass, which would be the 6th chord. If I move to the F chord, those same notes, E, D, C, would be 7-6-5. And so if you just try that, go and play those chords and play E, D, C over the C chord, and then go to the A minor chord and play E, D, C, and then go to the F chord and play E, D, C, and you're going to find that every time, even though it's the same notes, it's going to change color over the chords. And that might seem like common sense, but when you listen to it closer, you start to identify those colors as the numbers that you're labeling it. So when I'm mentioning label everything, that's a really key thing. Label them so that you can call them something. And again, I'm not saying this is easy at first. It's like pulling teeth, but I will tell you it eventually gets easier. And so when it starts to get easier, you start to see more growth, and you start to see just music becomes a whole lot more fun, and you become just more familiar with music and the songs that you're playing, and it just benefits you. But again, it's not a quick fix. It's something that you have to kind of come back to again and again. Even if you go away from it, come back to it again. And so eventually you will build that skill set so that, like I mentioned in the email, if you're coming from the email, that you can be listening in your car and you can pick up 90% of what I talk to now, so that when you go and pick up your guitar, you're already 90% there, and you just have to figure out a few parts on your guitar for that. So it's a huge skill set that people aren't born with, right? Like people that can do this really well, it's not some special gift. They just worked hard. They just worked hard and did the work to enable them and gone through frameworks like I just showed you today in order to get there. So anyway, I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know your experience with figuring out songs and what your struggles are and challenges are in the comments below. Let me know, and I'll talk to you soon.